Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the penultimate round of this year's Jerba Festival 2024. It is the Masters section and it is a self-proclaimed future world champion Hans Moke Niemann versus an actual world champion, actual world junior champion Andria Maurizzi. It's a really wild game, a lot of cool moments for you to pause the video and, help these two gentlemen solve the position. So let's dive straight into it. It's a really nice game. So Hans has the white pieces and he opens with e4. And going into this round, he's leading the tournament. So if he does well in this round, he's on his way to winning the tournament. e4, we have pawn to c6. Andria goes for the Caro-Kann defense. We have knight to f3 and d5. So a bit of a different move order waiting with this d4 move, but Hans now plays pawn to d3, which is very rare. Usually you will see captures on d5 or knight to c3 here. But he plays d3 and he offers a queen trade right away, which Andria goes for. We have captures, and queen captures on d1 with check. So not perhaps the most aesthetically pleasing way to play chess, but it is very tricky, as you'll see. Knight f6 attacks the pawn, knight f to d2, defending the pawn. Now you can defend it with f3, and you can also play f4, e5. So stopping f4 with pawn to g5 and a4. We have pawn to h5, knight to c3, and pawn to h4, just grabbing more space on the king side. But okay, all of this has been played before. Pawn h3, we have knight to h5 going after the f4 square, and knight to f3, attacking the g5 pawn, f6 defending, and now e5. Again, this has all been played before. Knight to d7, putting pressure on the pawn. And now in the games that have reached this position, knight to e4 is a known move, but here we have pawn to a5 by Hans, and it is now as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So okay, it's not really a pawn sacrifice because you are weakening the g5 pawn. But we do have a trade. Knight captures, and the bishop captures on g5, leaving Andria with the doubled e pawn to worry about. Bishop to f5, putting pressure on the c2 pawn, and now rook to a4, which is a very nice move. If you go after the h4 pawn, maybe it's a bit too early, because after rook to d8 check, now after we move the king to c1, there's bishop to h6 check, king to b1, rook to d2, and for the price of that one pawn, you've given black a whole lot of activity to work with. So instead, Hans goes for rook to a4, keeps the tension. He can always capture on h4. It's attacked twice, so it's not really an issue. And the queenside castles now, coming with check, and now king to c1. A very interesting move was bishop to d3, as Hans should really develop. And now if bishop captures on d3, c captures, and rook captures, you attack the rook, king c2, and once the rook moves, and this is the only good move, you have to block the rook on a4. Now rook to e1, the game continues, but white has completed his development, and he has a very enjoyable position for the price of that one pawn, but he will very quickly win it back. But okay, Hans played king to c1, knight to f4, now, hindering the development of the light square bishop, as you will have issues here. So bishop captures on f4, e captures on f4, undoubling the pawns now, bishop to e2, and pawn to e6. We have knight to e4 and rook to d5, nicely developing, putting pressure on that a5 pawn. Maybe you can further attack it with some bishop maneuvers here. Bishop to f3 now, with ideas of maybe doing some discoveries on the rook. We have bishop to e7 and knight to d2. Attacking the rook, we have rook back to d7, and now rook to e1. If you capture on f4, it's actually a trick. If rook captures on f4, bishop to g5 just wins for Marc Andria. The rook is attacked. If the rook moves, then the knight hangs. So you will just blunder here. So instead, after rook d7, we have rook to e1 by Hans, rook to g8, and now knight to b3. We have pawn to a6, and finally king to b1, getting off of this dark square diagonal. But now Marc Andria plays rook to f8. And again, you cannot touch the f4 pawn because bishop captures on c2 with check, and off goes the rook. So instead, after rook f8, rook to e2 by Hans, and now king to c7. We have rook to c4, bishop to d6, and now knight to d4, putting pressure on pretty much everything here. And king to b8 was played, and now we have a very, very interesting position because, well, you can capture the pawn on e6. Marc Andria could have defended it with rook to f6, but he wants to give it up in order to activate his pieces, so he brings the king to b8, knight captures on e6, rook to f6, and now knight back to d4. And here, okay, the bishop is attacked. You already sacrificed the pawn. You don't want to lose the bishop pair. He played bishop to g6, and this is a problem for Marc Andria, but luckily for him, Hans doesn't spot it. Do you see the problem with bishop to g6? What is now possible in the position that wasn't a move ago? Even pause the video and try to find a winning idea for Hans here while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking for tricky moves, even in an endgame. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight captures on c6 with check. And now you have to capture. If you don't capture, just knight to e5 will attack the rook and bishop, force more trades, and you're just going to be up 2 pawns, completely winning. So the reason that this is so strong is that after rook captures, you are now up 3 pawns, which is a compensation in itself. But there's no good move for black to make here. To give you an example, the a6 pawn is hanging as well, and let's say you defend it. Here comes rook d2, and black does not have a move for the rest of the game. You're pinned along the d file, and you're pinned along the 6th rank, and there is absolutely nothing you can do here. For example, bishop to f5. You want to move the bishops and trade off rooks. Nope, rook to b6. And now the possibility of rook to b7 check just again leaves black without a move. If bishop to e7, okay, all of the rooks are defended. You just trade. Rook captures on d7. Bishop captures, and now rook to b7 check. You're going to win the bishop here. And you're now up 3 clean pawns. So the black king is in check. You're gonna take the bishop here as well, and well, you're up a piece and 3 pawns, of course, completely winning. So knight captures on c6 is a big miss for Hans. He played bishop to g4, and okay, bishop to g4 is the second top move recommended by the engine. So obviously, if you don't see knight captures on c6, you go for bishop to g4, rook to d8, and now knight to f3. We have bishop to c7, and now rook to a4. Interestingly, Hans doesn't defend the pawn with pawn to b4. He goes rook to a4, and now bishop to f7. But pawn to b3, we have rook to d5, now again going after the a5 pawn, and knight captures on h4. So simply trading, rook captures on a5, rook captures, bishop captures, and now knight back to f3. So okay, Hans is just enjoying his extra pawn, and it's an extra passed pawn. So it will be Hans doing all the pushing for the win here. Bishop to c3. Okay, Marc Andre is down a pawn, but he does control this diagonal, and if he can get some nasty moves with the rook in, he could be checkmating Hans, or maybe even rook d6, just rook to d1 also will be checkmate. So pawn to h4, Hans not worried. We have rook to d6, threatening rook to d1 check, king a2, and rook to a1 checkmate, king to c1. Of course, you have to stop that, and now rook to d5, trying to go the other way around, and now rook to e4. Only move for Hans, he has to be ready to throw in rook to a4 if rook to a5 is played. So rook to a5, but he doesn't play it, he goes king to d1. Rook to a4 would not be all that impressive, because here you just trade, captures, and pawn to a5, b5 is coming, and two passed pawns will be created on the queen side, or even one, but it will be very strong. And with the bishop guarding the queening square, Hans will no longer be pushing for anything here. So king to d1, we have rook to a1 with check, king to e2, and now rook to a2, going after the c2 pawn. So rook captures on f4, clearing up the e3 square for the white king. Bishop captures on b3 as the c pawn is pinned. King to king to d3, attacking the bishop here. Now rook captures on c2. We have bishop to e6, trying to get the bishop off of the defense of the rook on c2. But now bishop to a1. Beautiful move by Marc Andria, defending the bishop with a tactic of rook to c3 check. But it is the absolute best move for Hans. He goes bishop captures, rook to c3 check, king to d2, rook captures on b3, and now he starts pushing pawn to h5. So is this just over? How do you stop the the past h pawn? Well, rook b2 check, king to e3, rook to b3 check. We have king back to e2, rook to b2 with check. Hans will have to move something if he's to advance those pawns. He plays knight to d2. Now rook to a2. The bishop has to be freed in order to cover the queening square. And while Hans should continue pushing with h6, it is the best move. He first plays king to d1, just nicely unpins. He doesn't want to see bishop to e3 while his king is on e2. Pawn to a5. Now Marc Andria's queenside pawns are also marching forward. Pawn to h6. We have pawn to a4. Pawn to g4, the absolute strongest move by Hans. He needs the other pawn as well in order to win this game. Pawn to a3 and pawn to g5 now. Pawn to g5 is nice, knight to b3 would have been better. But okay, pawn to g5, and now bishop to c3. Bishop to c3, again, not the most optimal move, but Marc Andria was already extremely low on time here. I think even pushing the 1 minute mark, and Hans had maybe some 8 minutes on the clock. But the real tricky move here is bishop to e5. It allows white sort of to blunder the game in a single move, because you have to play rook to e4. If you play rook to f5, seems like it's the same thing. Then comes rook captures on d2, and after king captures a2, and you cannot stop the pawn. And of course, black is winning now. But bishop to c3 was played. It's still tricky, but not as tricky. Knight to e4 by Hans. Again, instead of knight e4, knight to b3 is just game over. Yeah, you guard the queening square, and Marc Andria will have to spend 2 extra moves removing that knight from the defense of the a1 square, and then you just push the pawns. Point being that, let's say rook to b2, g6, rook captures on b3, g7, a2, g8 comes with queening, with check, and after king to a7 or c7, doesn't really matter. You play rook to f7 check, king to b6, and now this beautiful rook captures on b7 check, opening up the attack here. So now if king captures, you're gonna take the rook with check, and then, you know, of course, the promotion is delayed. You will then give another check and just win the pawn. Or if king to c5, okay, it's still possible to play. You will allow black to take a queen, but after the queen comes into the game, king c2, there's nothing here. You're just down too much material, and you're either gonna, well, lose the bishop or get checkmated. So that's pretty much it. So knight to b3, definitely the move here, and that's kind of the whole point. You just force black to waste 2 extra moves, and you will have 2 extra moves to push your pawns. That's pretty much it. But Hans went knight to e4. He attacked the bishop, but now bishop to e5. So you don't really win a move, as your rook is hanging here, and you're not in time to just, for example, play pawn to h7, because then there's rook to a1 with check, and after the king moves, there's a rook to h1, and again the pawn is easily stopped. So here, after bishop to e5, Hans played pawn to g6, and this is the mistake that gets Marc Andria back into the game. Now the real trick here, as this is a beautiful endgame, I will show it. Rook to f8 check, not just to give a check, and not even to guard the queening squares. The point is actually to bring the king over to the a file, and the reason for that is now you play rook f5, attacks the bishop, and after rook a1 check, king to c2 and the bishop moves. Now you play g6, and after a2, now you play rook to a5 with check, and after king b6, rook a8, and now you guarded the queening square, and you are ready to sacrifice your rook if needed for that pawn, and then your 2 extra connected pass pawns will win the game. And also, if rook to g1, then you will play g7, and you will have to trade everything off. Rook captures on a2, and now the extra piece will of course be completely winning. But Hans rushed it with pawn to g6, and now rook to a1 with check, king to e2, and pawn to a2. And now all of these fine tactics that we were discussing no longer apply, because of the simple rook to e1 check followed by queening also with check. So Hans has to keep this in mind at every point of the game. With rook to g4, he's sort of still hanging on, but he played pawn to g7, and now Marc Andria is completely winning. You know, what would you play here? You don't have to pause the video, you know, just what does your intuition tell you, because you are, of course, you guys are such strong, incredible players. What would you play here? rook to g1 is the move. If you go rook to e1 check, it's still better for black, but white doesn't have to capture. White, sorry, not that. White can play king to f3, and now after you make a move, let's say a1 queen, you bring a queen into the game. White also brings a queen into the game with check, king a7, and now queen to b3. There's bishop captures on f4, and well, black is just up a rook and much better. Okay, king captures on f4. You're down only an exchange, but still this will be enough for black to win the game. Maybe you can hold on, but there's no reason to do that. After rook to g1, as this is what Marc-Andrea played in the game, there is nothing more to be done. The queening square is defended and is attacked by the rook, and also the a1 square is defended by the bishop, so there is really nothing to do here. Hans tried knight to g3. At least now he will promote the pawn with check, but a1 queen, g8 queen comes with check, king to a7, and now queen to c4. But that's pretty much all there is. And if you don't give up the rook, let's say you want to save the rook, you play something like rook to f8, then all of your pieces are just out of the game, and the white king gets checkmated. Queen d1 check, king e3, rook to e1 with check, or anything really, and this will just be a nice checkmate as the bishop controls the dark squares. So after king a7, queen to c4 was played, sort of a last stand for Hans. Queen to d1 check, we have king to e3, and now rook to e1 with check. Knight to e2, and here rook captures on e2, and he was in this position on move 63 that Hans, Moke, and Niemann resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So with a draw or with a win here, Hans would probably be very sure to win the tournament, but now with a loss here, the situation changes drastically. And here you resign, and it's a very, I consider it to be very unsportsmanlike to resign on move 63. If you're playing chess, you should at least resign on move 64. But okay, point is that after you capture the rook, bishop captures on f4, or pretty much anything, king to f3, you're going to trade here, capture the pawn, and you're going to be up a full piece, of course, completely winning. You just push the pawn and win the game. Nothing more to be done here. So yeah, brilliant stuff by Marc-Andrea Maurizzi, and there you go. Hans got a taste of what it feels like playing a world champion, which Marc-Andrea Maurizzi is, and yeah, it was in a tough position. He persevered. He waited for that one mistake that Hans did, even though okay, Hans did more of them. Some of them were missed chances, some of them were actual blunders, but he took advantage of them nicely, playing pretty much all the time on increment, basically with 30 seconds on the clock for the last 30 moves. So yeah, great stuff by Marc-Andrea. Big congratulations on taking down Hans Niemann. And these are the standings after the penultimate round has been played. The leader now with 4 points, Daniel Dartha, and with 3.5 points we have a tie. Vasily Vanchuk, Hans Niemann, and Marc-Andrea Maurizzi, all with 3.5. Then with 3, Vilel Belasene and Aryan Tari, Gilles Moussard with 2.5, and Divya Desh with 1 point. She played against Vasily Vanchuk in the penultimate round, and she had a really good position, but well, Vasil offered a draw, and she accepted. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, brilliant stuff. Always study the end game. You see how difficult it is to play, and if you're good at it, you will be a nightmare for your opponents. I would like to thank Kevin Hawkins, Daniel Heist, the GMD over GMG, Anthony Palumbi, and Matthew Witten for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.